I'm going to call on, Governor Ron DeSantis, the President Donald Trump for, this stuff keeps going on, right? But we're praying every day. Prayer is good. Spirituality is good, but, prayers don't do much, right? So, it's good for the soul, but is this still happening? I think it is. So, we need to make some gun reforms.
Just hearing from a student there.
Another day in America, another mass shooting, this time at Florida State University, where many of my friends are just weeks away from graduating. But today, graduation was the last thing on their minds. Instead, they were focused on surviving each passing minute as gunfire erupted. Lives were lost at the hands of two shooters. Several people were injured, and the entire community was left shaken. This keeps happening because our lawmakers refuse to take action. And our president clearly doesn't care, something he made painfully obvious with the appalling response he gave, which is rightfully receiving major backlash. Before we get into Trump's statement, I want to share the words of a student eyewitness who said something especially powerful and worth hearing.
I'm going to call on, Governor Ron DeSantis, the President Donald Trump for, this stuff keeps going on, right? But we're praying every day. Prayer is good. Spirituality is good, but, prayers don't do much, right? So, it's good for the soul, but is this still happening? I think it is. So, we need to make some gun reforms.
Just hearing from a student there.
Saw the event happen. Is that right?
Yeah, well, we were over in the loading bay right here next to it and started seeing everybody run. The maintenance guys were telling everybody to get out of the building. So everybody started coming out the back. And if they would have probably moved 20 feet further, they would have been on this side of the building, which is where he walked out. He came out.
The shooter?
Yeah, he came out this door right here, and then he saw the maintenance guy who was waving everybody, and I guess heard him probably, and turned and shot that way towards our direction, towards him. There's a golf cart over here with a bullet hole in it.
Yeah, we got a picture of
that blocked it. So that was meant for him. And then after that, he turned this way and started shooting out on the green. He didn't shoot many shots when he came outside. It was only 4 or 5 shots, but he shot 2 at our direction, and then he shot 2 this direction, and that's the girl that got shot in the butt over here that was laying down for a while. They stretchered her off. She looked like she was alive, but I'm not sure. I hope that she is. But then he went back inside. I should have probably hid. I pulled out my phone and started videoing everything and came back out.
Thoughts and prayers don't go far. Especially on days like today, they feel empty. And that's because the people offering them often have no intention of doing anything more. They don't want to comfort. They won't put in the work. They're not listening. And they have no desire to change. Their minds are made up, locked in, and nothing seems capable of shifting their stand. Except maybe if this kind of tragedy hit their own families. Sadly, it's that grim. Only something that horrific might move them. There's no empathy here. They don't care about others, just about the money flowing in from the NRA and pretending this is all about protecting the Second Amendment. Meanwhile, they enabled Donald Trump to trample all over the Constitution. It's beyond frustrating. It's tragic. It's devastating. And worst of all, it's become predictable. Just a week ago, a congressional Democrat was speaking out on exactly this. Here's what they had to say.
Have to wonder then, what other invasions of your medical privacy will this administration encourage? Given the administration's embrace of Project 2025, is reproductive health care next? So, why are we having this hearing? For one thing, it's yet another chance for our Republican colleagues to spread misinformation about transgender individuals and their medical care, because they think they'll score political points by bullying the young people receiving that care and their families, regardless of the fact that every major medical and mental health institution in the U.S., representing more than 1.3 million doctors, supports age-appropriate, gender-affirming care for transgender people. And that includes the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Psychological Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and the Endocrine Society, among other organizations. But this is part of a pattern in practice for our colleagues who are too willing to disregard Americans' fundamental rights and freedoms in order to meddle in people's personal medical decisions for political gain, injecting their own religious or political beliefs into choices that rightly should be left between individuals, their families, and their doctors. It's abundantly clear that our Republican majority only cares about some rights and freedoms for some people rather than those that all Americans should enjoy. In addition to spreading misinformation, this hearing is meant to distract Americans, while our Republican colleagues continue to ignore the real problems. And we don't have to look far to find out why our colleagues chose to have this hearing this week. Believe me, bullying transgender kids and families is not the #1 concern for any of our constituents. I know because I've been holding town halls in my district and in some of theirs too. No, our constituents' #1 concern is how they're going to pay for housing, healthcare, food, clothes, college, and retirement. With the global
Not only does Donald Trump not care, but his Republican budget is defunding programs, and not to take people's guns away, to just keep people safe, but to prevent gun violence. And it can't even go that far. They can't even do that as students lose their lives. Worst of all is what he had to say, though. Take a listen.
President, we're learning that there are now 2 deceased following that shooting at Florida State University. Following and amid that, is there any changes that you want to see to gun legislation? Anything you see broken with gun laws in our country?
I'm going to have to look. I'm a big advocate of the Second Amendment. I have been from the beginning. I protected it, and these things are terrible. But the gun doesn't do the shooting. The people do. It's a phrase that's used probably too often. I will tell you that it's a shame. I'm just hearing about it now. I just hear about it. I know the area very well. I know the school very well. I know everything about it. It's Florida. And we'll have more to say about it later. I have to
What do
see
you
what
mean when you
happens.
say there will be more to say about it?
Only in terms of what happened. As far as legislation is concerned, this has been going on for a long time. I have an obligation to protect the Second Amendment. I ran on the Second Amendment, among many other things, and I will always protect the Second Amendment.
He clearly doesn't care. Not even a little. He immediately pivots to bragging about how much he loves the Second Amendment, how great he's been for it, how the NRA loves him, gun owners love him, everyone loves him. But he says nothing, absolutely nothing, about the lives lost today, about the parents who will never see their child walk across that graduation stage. He simply doesn't care. And it's on days like this that we're reminded of the choice we made not long ago, back in November. Because while Trump was shutting down the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention, Vice President Kamala Harris was the one who opened it. And in response to today's tragedy, here's what she had to say.
Of course, and we are grateful to the first responders and the law enforcement that were on the scene, but this is just a senseless tragedy on top of so many senseless tragedies. And it's just outrageous that every day in our country, in the United States of America, that parents have to send their children to school worried about whether or not their child will come home alive. It's senseless. It is. We've got to stop it. And we have to end this epidemic of gun violence in our country once and for all. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. So we will continue, of course, to send our prayers and our thoughts to the families and all those who were affected, including, I'm going off script right now, but listen, at the last year, I started a college tour, and I traveled our country meeting with our young leaders, right? And so it was college-age young leaders. So I did trade schools, colleges, universities, community colleges. By the way, I love Gen Z. I just love Gen Z. Right? But I'll tell you, one of the things I asked every time I went to the auditorium, and it would be filled with these young leaders, students, and I'd ask them, raise your hand if at any point between kindergarten and 12th grade you had to endure an active shooter drill. And for the young leaders who are here who are raising their hand, I'm telling you, every time the auditorium was packed and almost every hand went up. A lot of us, I'll speak about myself, we had, I grew up in California, earthquake drills, we had fire drills, but our kids are sitting in a classroom where they should be fulfilling their God-given potential, and some part of their big, beautiful brain is concerned about a shooter busting through the door of the classroom. It does not have to be this way. It does not have to be this way.
That is the choice, that we had someone who actually cared, someone who did the work. You messed up, America. And I think every day we realize more and more. And, there's a lot that I could say right now. I have a lot of feelings, as you might expect. But I'm going to let my own Congressman Maxwell Frost do the talking for me.
People like the grifter-in-chief Trump and President Musk are openly using their public offices to enrich themselves to the tune of billions of dollars. So if we want to look at waste, fraud, and abuse, which I'm down to do, why is there complete silence on the other side of the aisle about looking at the complete grifter that is the President of the United States and the richest man on the earth, which is looking into things like Social Security and different things like that? Why don't we investigate the real corruption?
Hold off. Point of order.
I reclaim my time.
Point of order.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Hold off. There was a point of order when you said something. Who asked for it? Mr. Higgins. Would you like to revise your remark with respect to improperly identifying the President of the United States?
I'll say President Musk and grifter-in-chief Trump.
All right.
Grifter-in-chief.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Wait a second.
If I wanted to challenge someone to a fight, they would know it. Thank you.
Chairman, if Mr. Musk actually came here, then maybe the rules committee.
I heard no disparagement of
I'll say something else.
We'll save a lot of time.
I'll say something else.
Okay. All right. We're going to let Chair recognize Mr. Frost. You still have 3:49. You're going to maybe revise the disparaging comment about the president because that's supposed to be our decorum here. And
it is supposed to be. President Musk and the President of the United States, Donald Trump, who is engaged in grifting. I find it astonishing that this committee is focused on passing legislation that would give the Trump administration more power just 24 hours after we learned that members of this administration, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, Vice President J.D. Vance, and other top decision makers are responsible for one of the greatest national security failures of this century. Over the course of several days, this chat openly discussed military operations against the Houthis in Yemen, putting our service members at risk and putting our country at risk. This is the Oversight Committee. We need to conduct oversight. First, I will be reintroducing the Voting Overseas Treated Equally for Service Members Act, or the VOTES Act. I'm grateful to the members of this committee for their unanimous support of the VOTES Act when it was marked up last Congress. This country owes a lot to those who volunteer to serve, and for as long as our nation has fought wars and deployed service members abroad, we've recognized the right of those in uniform to participate in the democracy that they defend. This is personal to me. I come from a family that's been in the United States Air Force since it was the United States Army Air Corps. Absentee voting for service members goes at least as far back to the Civil War, and that legacy continues under UOCAVA, the Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, and the MOVE Act, which guaranteed ballot access to active duty service members abroad. The MOVE Act, however, was passed over 15 years ago, and today it's not just active duty service members who might be deployed overseas.
It's just hard on a day like this. A few people reached out knowing I'm from Florida and that I have friends at FSU. I really appreciate that. It meant a lot. Some of my friends were near where everything happened today, but thankfully none of them were hurt. I was able to talk to them right after I saw the news. Still, it's heartbreaking that this keeps happening and nothing ever changes. That's why it's more important than ever to keep calling out the people responsible. And we're going to keep doing exactly that on this show every single day. If you want to support this work, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and give the video a like. I know this wasn't an easy one to watch. It's painful. But if you made it to the end, I'd love it if you dropped a blue heart in the comments. Until next time, take care.